The Los Angeles Rams have no cap space whatsoever. They're over the cap by $33 million. And no matter who they restructure, who they cut, they're probably still going to be over the cap. So in terms of roster cuts, who can you really cut? It just makes no sense to cut anybody. The good part is that they don't have a bunch of free agents that are key contributors. They have some, but not a bunch. A bunch are kind of replaceable. They have 16 pending free agents, and these are the most notable ones. Leonard Floyd, who I think is going to leave because he's going to demand way too much money. Austin Blythe, I think he's going to leave as well, even though he should be a top priority to keep. Troy Hill, he leaves. Slot corner, older side of, he's 30. I think he leaves. Gerald Everett, I think Everett leaves as well. John Johnson, one of the better safeties in the league, I think he's going to leave as well. Josh Reynolds is going to leave. That's why they drafted Van Jefferson. And Samson Ebukam and Darius Williams, I think Darius Williams stays for sure. The reason is because he's a restricted free agent. And if any team wants to sign Darius Williams, the Rams can slap a franchise tender on him, which means that if any team decides to sign him, they can get a pick in return. So because of that, I think Darius Williams stays. And Samson Ebukam, while I would like him to stay, I don't think he probably will. But for the sake of this video, I think he stays as well. So when talking about their positions of needs, they don't have many. At inside linebacker, that's one. At edge rusher, that's another one because they're losing Leonard Floyd. And at center, which I think they could address in the draft. And wide receiver number 3, but I think that's why they signed Van Jefferson. The Rams need a deep threat because Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are good receivers, but they aren't necessarily deep threats, so they need a deep threat. Marvin Jones has been connected to the Los Angeles Rams, but let's be honest, unless Marvin Jones takes a massive pay cut, and I mean a huge pay cut, he is not going to be on the Rams. Because of that, I don't think it's realistic, but some deep threat wide receivers that you can look for are Marvin Jones, of course, Khalif Raymond, John Ross, or Marvin Hall. I think John Ross would be perfect. He can potentially revive his career with the Los Angeles Rams. I would really like him to sign with them. Then at inside linebacker, you got a veteran Avery Williamson who might be willing to play for the Rams for cheap, and Denzel Perryman, who might be on the more expensive side, even though he's not as good as Avery Williamson. He is younger, which I think goes a huge way in negotiating a contract. And at edge rusher, there's really no edge rusher in this free agency class that the Rams can target that they can afford because they have literally no money to sign anybody. But I think ultimately in free agency, they sign John Ross, and that's it. I think they don't make much free agent moves because they don't have the money to. But I think in the draft is where the Rams are going to flourish the most. I know they don't have a first-round pick, but they have a second-rounder. They have 2 third-rounders. They have a 4th, a 6th, and a 7th. I think those 2 third-rounders are going to go a long way. And in the third round of the draft, you can find a lot of gems, and you can get a lot of good players, and I think that's what the Rams are going to do. They need a center, and I said they're going to address their center position in the draft. 3 guys that stand out: Creed Humphrey, Landon Dickerson, and Quinn Miners. I think out of the 3, they draft Creed Humphrey because I think Quinn Miners is going to be off the board. So is Landon Dickerson. Landon Dickerson is only falling off because of injury history, but if it wasn't for his injury, he'd be at the top of this list. I think they draft Creed Humphrey with his 57th pick. Then in the 3rd round, I think inside linebacker out of LSU, Jabril Cox is a real possibility, and I think they could draft him. Jabril Cox is a really good linebacker. The fact that he hasn't been talked about much in this draft is a shame, but he had a really good Senior Bowl, and expect the Rams to address that position in the draft as well. And don't be surprised if Jabril Cox is the name. So in the draft, ultimately, I'm not going to go through like all the rounds, but the 2 most important players I have them drafting are Creed Humphrey and Jabril Cox. And this is the Los Angeles Rams potential depth chart. Matthew Stafford, Cam Akers, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, John Ross, Tyler Higbee, Andrew Whitworth, David Edwards, Creed Humphrey, Austin Corbett, Rob Harvenstein, and on defense, Michael Brockers, Sebastian Joseph Day, Aaron Donald, Samson Ebukam, Jabril Cox, Troy Reader, Terrell Lewis, who was hurt last season, but I think he's going to be good to go this upcoming season, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, David Long Jr., Jordan Fuller, and Taylor Rapp. Of course, the Rams are going to lose a lot of key players this upcoming season because they don't have the money to re-sign them. But ultimately, when you have Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald on your defense, I think you'll be fine as long as the scheme is good. And the Rams already made their splash offseason move already. Their splash move was getting rid of Jared Goff and bringing in Matthew Stafford. If Marvin Jones decides to take that pay cut, of course, it would be huge for the Rams, but I don't know how realistic that is. But the Rams already made their splash move. It was getting Matthew Stafford in. Even though I don't have them making much offseason moves, the Rams are still a team that I would put at the top of my list in terms of going to the Super Bowl this upcoming season. The only team in the NFC who I think I'd put above are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But outside of them, I think the Rams are second. And I think this season is going to be the season where Matthew Stafford changes the reputation on his career and does a full 360 because his career was wasted with the Detroit Lions. Basically, his whole damn career was wasted with the Detroit Lions so far. But now with the Los Angeles Rams, with the great roster around him, a great running game, a great head coach in Sean McVay, offensive weapons, an offensive line, an elite defense, look for the Rams to make noise and Matthew Stafford to have an MVP-like season.